Hey listeners, Mallory Willsea here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. I get the privilege of working alongside all of our creators at Enrollify, but I wanted to take just a quick moment to tell you about why I love the Talking Tactics podcast hosted by Diana Kibbolds. Every other Tuesday, Day drops a new episode where she focuses on a single tactic that moved the needle on any enrollment metric, from inquiries and booth visitors to apps completed and deposits, even registrations, you name it. The catch? The tactic had to be done with limited resources, either by a single person or a small but mighty team, or limited time, or maybe without a lot of money. The podcast format is fun and engaging, and it's just different from the more traditional 60-minute interview style shows. If you work in enrollment management or marketing, be sure to give Day's show a listen. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Talking Tactics wherever you get your podcasts.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Hey everyone, Mallory here. I'm thrilled to introduce our next Pulse Check mini-series called Personalizing Prospective Student Journeys, a special 3-part series hosted by yours truly. Over the next 3 weeks, join me as I sit down with Dustin Ramsdell, Community Engagement Lead at Pathify and the host of the Higher Ed Geek podcast, which you can find right here on the Enrollify Network. The prospective student journey is complex and highly emotional. This series focuses on digital experience platforms and how this technology and the teams using it help students make informed choices from the start of their exploration, how to create community even before the student officially enrolls, and then, upon commitment, how institutions can best prepare a student for what is likely one of the biggest transitions and financial commitments of their life. All right, friends, without further ado, let's dive in. All right, friends, welcome back. Last but not least, we are here for part 3 of this special 3-part series on the Pulse Check, Personalizing Prospective Student Journeys. Dustin, welcome back.
Good to be back.
So today we are talking about setting students up for success. So friends, if you missed the first 2 episodes in this series, we have already covered the exploration phase and how to help students make informed choices. Then in part 2, we talked about commitment and how you can create community before that accepted student ever deposits. Well, now we're at the stage in the journey where that student has indeed decided to enroll at your institution. And now as enrollment marketers, professionals, higher ed pros, we need to set that student up for success. So Dustin, let's not waste any time. Once that student's committed, how should we work to prepare them?
Yeah, it's kind of funny when I was thinking about this, where last episode felt like the murky middle for the students. I feel like this is sometimes the murky middle for institutions, because certainly there might be orientation programming that is, planned well in advance and prepared, by dedicated staff members. But there's, often a long time leading up to that. And again, it should be time well spent helping that student to do all the things on their checklist and feel very comfortable and confident for kind of what they're getting themselves into for their collegiate journey. So I think, there's a lot of things, obviously, that they can be doing to prepare them. But, there are some very important things around their funding that they absolutely need to do, and maybe, a bunch of forms that they need to fill out. But there's also just the idea around, again, helping them to understand the resources that are available to them, how they're going to access them, and keeping everything kind of organized for the student. Because I think, there can be all these checklists of important things like registering for classes and getting your textbooks and all that. But we should also be kind of making clear tasks that have to be viewed and understood and hopefully completed around, like, joined a student club, reached out to my roommate if that applies, or, figured out how I'm going to get to campus, because it could be like, well, maybe I'm in an area, maybe I could take public transportation, maybe I should park, so I got to get a park, and sort of those kind of things where you could present a whole task list of things and sort of adjoining resources to make sure that they're well prepared. So I think it's on the institution to organize everything and to create reminders and engage with the students who seem to be getting stuck up somewhere if they're not completing certain tasks. So I think that's kind of the 30,000-foot view of this topic, and I think starting to kind of zoom in on sort of how institutions can do that in the best way possible.
I can't agree with you more. It is the responsibility of the school to make that post-admission process as painless as possible. And I'm sure we have gone past the days of just offering a simple post-application checklist to pop with a magnet on the fridge. So let's zoom in. What are some really concrete things that schools can do to assist students during this critical time? Because let's not forget, summer melt is real.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's sort of the urgency here is that, you if you're going on kind of that timeline, this is that crucial time in the sense of, if they're not hearing from the institution, if they're not doing anything, it's kind of just wasted time. And they, that ambiguity, that anxiety, might creep back in because they might have been like, what, I'm doing this. I'm, committing, I'm depositing, let's go. And then that sort of, rush of, kind of endorphins or whatever kind of fades away. And then all the complexity kind of comes back in of, this journey that they're about to embark on. So I think there is that area of improvement where, you've traditionally kind of back in the day seen that institutions would maybe just send a folder or, this, just treasure trove of papers that say like, hey, you're accepted. Here's, all these things that you have to do. It's all just kind of hard copy and kind of jumbled together. And there's maybe not a really clear, compelling way to track everything on the institution side to say, okay, this student has done this or that, or any of those sort of things. Like it's, things are getting lost in the mail or sort of, having this transit time and all that. So that's definitely a big area of improvement, is making sure that everything is digitized, everything is organized well for the student. They have sort of the context for, a lot of these forms. You're not just dumping things on students, and that you can provide encouragement, you can provide nudges, you can make outlets for questions of humans or, chatbots and things available. And I think those are all areas of improvement that I think institutions are, investing in, in the sense of their kind of digital experience platform. They may be just kind of saying like, well, we have our student information system. They go on there, it might have some things available that they need to complete. But a big thing that kind of resonates with me, and I'll maybe kind of bounce this back to you for sort of your point of view, is that a student information system isn't necessarily something that should really be as forward-facing to students as it traditionally has. It's kind of a database, it's a repository, it's kind of this warehouse, but I think there's been this over-reliance on it as the student-facing system where they're doing a lot of activities. Like you can kind of channel that information and feed it in, I think, to other places that could be a lot more user-friendly.
I suspect that the SIS has ballooned in scope because of a few things. One, maybe the simplest and most obvious being resource constraints within units to be able to afford other systems. And so when you're on a student information system, once you're on it, it's really hard to move off because of the amount of time and investment that it takes to even stand something like that up. So if it can then, right, if its primary use is X, but it can also help you accomplish Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, and F, there is something maybe attractive and compelling around that when you don't have a lot of extra dollars or even staff time or resources laying around. But just because it's the easy choice doesn't make it the right choice. And I think what you're getting at is this isn't the type of technology that builds communities.
Right. Yeah. It's being a little bit overclocked on its functionality for exactly all the reasons that you said. And I think what I've sort of settled on is like, well, how can we move that to the background, keep that engine roaring, doing as much as it can and getting all the value that it can, kind of full optimization for the institution, and put something, a front layer on top of it that is sort of, fed by that powerful kind of workhorse of a system for the institution, and creating a layer that has functionality that is designed to be community building, user friendly, mobile friendly, all these sort of things, like, and just is a much more rich, robust environment designed to be supportive and engaging for the student, where the student information systems, a lot of them kind of have like dated interfaces, or just, like they're not built to be, what we would hope a sort of, kind of orientation experience for a new student getting kind of a first impression still of the institution would be. And there's similar things here in terms of areas of improvement that I've seen where institutions will also overclock like their learning management system. Say like, well, we built a course that's an orientation course in the LMS. And it's like, that's great. I mean, especially if you're helping to try to have this person learn how to use the LMS, but then they're presuming that people are going to be building community in there and doing whatever else. And it's like, again, it's not what it was designed for. If you can kind of, again, put that in the background, at least from like an orientation perspective, certainly point people there to learn that functionality as as they're navigating courses and learning concepts and all that. But like, don't put a burden upon a system of which it was never designed for, and try to build a digital experience platform that can kind of be a nexus at this juncture where, the student has deposited, they've got their single sign-on, they're entering into the whole sort of digital universe of the institution. You can start to kind of put things in their place of where they kind of fully should be, and hopefully bring them all together, at least from a starting point, kind of this nexus digital experience platform where, they have that dashboard where they can kind of start their day and start to kind of feel out that routine that they hopefully would be using every day as a student.
At this stage for the student emotionally, there's kind of equal parts relief and impatience, right? Relief because they've just made it through what was probably a pretty intense process, one of the most complicated decisions this individual's ever had to make. But then also impatience because they've made it through this process and now they're ready for the next step and they really want to start. And any communication now that you are sending to that individual is, something that they're getting giddy about it, right? Like, this is actually happening. Let's go. Like, I want to enroll in classes and I want to meet other students. And so where's the role in technology and, hyping up the good emotions here?
Yeah, I mean, because, I've worked with fully online students who, lived half a world away, maybe would never come to the campus that they were studying at, but they really wanted to get a physical ID card mailed to them. It's those kind of things that sort of like, okay, I feel like official, this is real, I'm a part of this community. And again, that's like something that we've kind of interwoven in our other conversations. It's like, we're not trying to maybe get away from that sort of emotional sizzle reel kind of effect, and impact. It's trying to honor that and combine it with making sure there's very substantive support, preparation, throughout this entire journey. So, you're making it very clear how a student would get, make that happen, get that physical ID card sent to them, and how can they, get excited by meeting their fellow students, building those bonds, and feeling really well prepared in terms of like a social safety net prior to setting foot on campus or, starting the first day of classes online, whatever modality they might be in. So yeah, you want to drum up that excitement. You want to maintain it, and you don't want things like you didn't fill out that one random form to get in the way of that, because it's like, well, you didn't fill that out, which means you don't get your funding, which means you don't get your textbooks, which means you are instantly behind when day one starts for your classes and stuff. You want to be, again, taking advantage of hopefully, ample time that the student has to go through all those steps and have it be really thorough, that again honors all of those sort of corners and details of what their academic life is going to look like, all the fun stuff, all the important stuff, and everything in between.
Yeah, and hopefully the technology can ease some of the staff burden around by automating some of those nudges and communications, particularly around those critical dates and deadlines for getting in deposits, registering for classes, signing up for orientation, whatever it might be. I've talked to so many professionals, especially post-pandemic, who leaders in higher ed right now are so resource strapped, and it's very hard to retain staff members. or fill the open positions that exist. And this is a clear space for where technology can come in and kind of augment some of these communications and processes to ensure that the student is indeed being nudged towards taking those right actions. Because I think we already said it, but I do think it is the responsibility of the institution to make that post-admission process as painless and as seamless as possible. And you brought up last time, Dustin, this is important for important strategies for anybody, but especially when we are talking about first generation students who have not been through this process before with their families, and the learning curve for them is even steeper.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of this stuff, like, it bears repeating. Let's just keep kind of beating the drum of, some of these kind of core points we're making here. And yeah, I mean, it's, throughout all of this, you should hopefully be personalizing it based on roles, based on the information that you know about the student through their, application process and everything else, where, yeah, a simple tag of a yes or no question, like, hey, are you a first generation student? Do you identify that way? And that can mean that, like, they have a role tagged on their profile where they have social groups, social support groups provided to, kind of guide them through this process, that near peer or just, peer to peer kind of at the same level. We're going through all the same stuff together. That's important, the near peer, to kind of guide them through the ambiguities of this. But yeah, I mean, that can be, again, a sort of guiding light through the way that you're building these digital experience platforms, the way that you're organizing all these tasks, the way that you're trying to provide sort of a high touch experience empowered by high tech to make sure that these students, who I feel like are kind of balancing on kind of the razor's edge, get through this experience versus, putting that burden on the student to figure it all out and to navigate it, get everything done on time. Because, yeah, if you build a very rich and robust digital experience platform that is interconnected to the rest of your tech stack, you can have the ability for a student to complete tasks, and then they're not just, filling out a form digitally, it completes, and then it just kind of dumps on someone's desk. It could hopefully be like, you fill this in, cool, then it triggers this to where it automates this to get sent to you. You sign up for the orientation session, you click save, you're done, creates a calendar event for you, so you know when that is. It sends the information over to the orientation office. They know they've got 50 heads coming on orientation number 2 on this particular date. They can kind of prepare, everything on their end, and it's just that idea that, like, everybody's sort of empowered to kind of get things done that they need to get done and have the information that they need to feel well prepared for what's to come. So yeah, it's so important, I think, to have this thorough orientation for the students, and to, yeah, like you said, like, optimize the time of, staff members who, through all of this, hopefully can spend their time on the things that are sort of high impact, not wasting their time on answering the same question, dozens and dozens of times. Like, you've anticipated those questions, you've built in, as part of your digital experience platforms, outlets for these students to get peer-to-peer support from trained peer mentors. I'll make sure to make that point here. Not made it clear enough before. Peer mentors are trained people, not just, friends talking to each other, and other things, like your friendly neighborhood AI-empowered chatbot and all that good stuff.
Hey everyone, it's Mallory. I'm hosting the Engage Summit this summer in Raleigh, North Carolina. The theme of the conference is AI Got You. We're not just talking theories. This conference is your guide to understanding and applying AI at your institution. By the end, you won't just get AI, you'll be ready to lead your campus through an AI transformation. It's for everyone who wants to use AI to level up everything you're doing. Whether your focus is to recruit or retain, the summit offers a platform to learn, network, and bring back actionable insights to enhance your student engagement strategies. I hope you'll join me and some of your favorite Enrollify creators in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, like Jamie Hunt, Dustin Ramsdell, and Allison Tercio. Use the discount code Enrollify50, and you can register for just $99. So join us at the Engage Summit this June. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there. Something I'm taking away from this is that orientation is so much more than just a day or a weekend on campus, or digitally experienced, but that it is orientation truly is the sum of everything that takes place from deposit through that first day of class. Like that is how maybe we should be thinking about orientation if we're not already.
Yeah, and it's even, there's a lot of times at institutions very strong first year experience programs, and that's even just a philosophy that hopefully should guide institutional leaders as they're developing strategies. Because like the worst version of this is where maybe you have that first year experience course or other things, but it is that idea where they just see is like, well, orientation's a day, we told you everything, and we presume that you memorized it or like are not going to need to be reminded of any of these things ever again. And like this is just a confluence of what could be months worth of time and a collection of tasks. And that one day we were getting together, it's super high impact, it can be really fun, and you're seeing everything maybe in person for the first time, you've done everything digitally up to this point, and it's hopefully a spirit that can be active through especially a student's first year, but hopefully throughout their time, where they're consistently being reminded of like, we are here for you, we have tutoring, we have mental health support. Like you're serving these things up in a timely and relevant fashion, in the digital experience platforms that they're using and everything. So I think that there's a really important strategy here that's certainly should be focused on orientation, but should also be focused on the entire student experience.
You just anticipated where I was about to go next, because come the first day of class, our work is still not done. There are huge challenges in the United States in terms of retaining students, and retention can be, depending on the institution type or the type of student, extremely challenging. There's data that indicates that for community colleges, upwards of 50% of first-year students do not return. So you have just done, as a school, all of this work to bring in a new student just to have them walk right back out the door a year later. I would not say that anybody has been served well in that scenario. So how should institutions keep that spirit active throughout that first year and beyond?
Well, yeah, I mean, it can definitely center around like a digital experience platform, because I think, it would be wild to think of like a very lopsided sort of scenario here where there's a lot of investment put, or all of it is put on sort of, this prospective student journey, and then it just completely falls off. And you'd have a lot of students who struggle. I mean, it is just an idea that there's certain times a year, midterm, final exam time, when like probably people would be much more inclined to utilize a tutor. So it's like, let's try to build that into, send out notifications through the digital experience platform and the app and via email, and, maybe do some other, outreach or something, keep things timely, keep things relevant. And I mean, I think it's the purpose of, I think, really kind of hammering on this point is that if you keep plugged into a lot of the stuff coming out of Inside Higher Ed and their student voice surveys, like there's a lot of very clear and compelling takeaways that show a lack of awareness is a major issue as to why students struggle. Like they just don't even know the resources that are available to them. These resources are going underutilized, and that could help address these retention concerns. And that's kind of just the immense tragedy to me, is that like, these students could have benefited from these things, but just didn't even know they existed, or knew they existed, but had no idea where to start to get that help. So, I mean, the institution is well served by not presuming that every student has this full memorized comprehension of every resource and how they're accessed, and what the cost may be associated. Hopefully it is not any cost upfront to the student. Their student fees cover everything, and they can just kind of, get the support that they need when they need it. But I mean, keeping the spirit active is so important. And I think it's an area where I would see, and I feel like this is a whole other conversation, but like the idea of the institution coming together, collaborating, trying to break down silos, because this is that idea of like, it's going to take orientation, kind of handing it off potentially to that first year office kind of giving it to, I don't know what you'd call it. I mean, some places do have like a second year experience, but just that idea of like a upper class experience, the idea of like, okay, you've gotten through your first year, you've done everything once. We still need to make sure that we're identifying any trend lines, giving timely and relevant reminders and nudges about resources, and trying to find those, those red flags of saying like, okay, well, this student hasn't logged into the LMS in over a week. This student hasn't, any of these sort of behaviors. Like those are the people I would hope are really empowered, a sort of robust student support team for all students are really empowered to keep the spirit active throughout a student's first year and beyond.
Dustin, you brought up this idea of silos, and that is maybe higher ed's longest running joke that there are all these silos that exist. I have to take the opportunity to share with our listeners that yesterday we launched our very new podcast called Breaking Silos with host Shane Baglini from Muhlenberg College. And the whole point and purpose of that podcast is to showcase and feature the really remarkable work that is happening between different departments on campuses who are coming together to achieve common goals, implement new initiatives, and truly break down the silos that have always existed on campuses. So, Dustin, I didn't even ask you to tee me up for that one, but couldn't miss that opportunity since the podcast just dropped. That first episode just dropped yesterday. So, folks, you can find that on your favorite podcast network.
That must have been why it was ringing in my head. But yeah, it is one of those long-standing kind of issues and everything, and really excited, for those conversations to kind of talk about, because it feels like it's an insurmountable thing. It is not. So I think these are important conversations to have to kind of demystify that sort of notion.
Absolutely. Well, Dustin, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you over these last couple weeks on this little mini series around personalizing prospective student journeys. We've now dug deep into kind of the three key phases: exploration, commitment, and now, of course, preparation, orientation. Any parting words as we wrap this mini series up?
Yeah, this work, it is, complex. It is hard, but it is important work. It's going to take a lot of people with a clear vision, a clear goal in mind, and, bringing together various stakeholders, trying to break down those silos and everything. So I know that this is not easy, but I think, as we're looking at institutions struggling with recruitment, struggling with retention, I think these are hopefully clear bits of advice and motivation, inspiration for folks to do the things that I think are just really impactful strategies that can help across the board, help make sure that students are well served and the institutions are well served. So I hope this has been helpful. Enjoyed talking to you as well, and just really appreciate the opportunity.
And friends, if you want more of Dustin in your earbuds, you can, of course, find him as the host of the Higher Ed Geek podcast right here on the Enrollify Network. It is a tremendous podcast, one of our longest running ones, and I highly encourage you to check that out too. Next week, we'll be back with a brand new Pulse Check mini series. Stay tuned. We'll see you next time. This Pulse Check mini-series has been brought to you by Pathify. Gone are the days of clunky interfaces, disjointed systems, and massive, unhelpful link farms. Centralize all your systems with Pathify so that students see the information that matters to them in a digital experience that actually makes sense. From prospective students through alumni, it's about time the student experience started looking and acting like a consumer app from this century. Visit pathify.com for more. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.